So, in my opinion, these theater kids from the Florida school shooting are being groomed to be like future politicians. Like, especially this David Hogg kid. Like, he was recently on a segment from MSNBC, and this is one of his quotes. I'm not a liberal. I'm not trying to push a liberal agenda here. I'm not trying to push a conservative agenda. I'm trying to push an agenda that saves our children and saves our future, right? So this is clearly like a statement a politician would make, and the implication is that, uh, you know, the right policies are leftist policies because he's like, it's not a right or a left issue. It's saving our children, and the way you save our children is by implementing gun regulations and taking away your gun rights. So whose policies are those typically? Typically that's the left-wing policies. So the implication with that statement is that the left is correct and that they are right and their policies will save kids, right? And this is a rhetoric you keep hearing spewed by these kids because they are the tools of the Democrats. The Democrats can't say a lot of the stuff that these kids are saying themselves, so they get them to say it, and then they blast it out. They have close to like 1 million followers, some of them. This kid has like 300 some thousand now. Then a lot of the Democratic base starts saying it, and then once that happens, then their politicians can start saying the same shit, right? So, they're just being used to push for this narrative more, and now he's even come out and said that we should not blame the sheriff, the Democratic sheriff, or the Democratic school superintendent whose policies led to the events that happened within that school shootings, whose policies let the Cruz kid go, right? Who essentially let all these other criminals do these crimes just so they can bring their numbers down so they continue getting government funding. So it's not these guys' fault, it's the Republican governor's fault, which is hilarious. It's clearly political. They're not trying to address the real problem. They're going after Republicans in gun rights. It's not the NRA that they're really after. They're after gun rights. That's the NRA is just another term, is synonymous to them for taking away more gun rights, right? So they pretend, oh, we're not against you. We're not against these citizens who want to own guns. We're against the NRA, the institution, which is bullshit, right? That's not what they're actually against. And he's now saying, yeah, like boycott Florida, go to like Puerto Rico instead because of the poor job that Trump is doing to help their economy, right? So he's pushing, he's using all of their talking points. So 17-year-old kids, on average, do not know that much about politics. They're not that well informed, especially theater kids, right? So, you should ask yourself, why is it these kids that are getting so much attention and stuff, and not the other kids who are pushing for like maybe teachers having, being armed and this shit? Like these kids aren't being blasted by Twitter, aren't being promoted by Twitter, aren't being promoted by the media, all this shit. So they're like, oh, look at this girl, Emma Gonzalez. She has more followers than the NRA. It's like, yeah, of course, because she's everywhere. You're putting her in everybody's timelines, right? Like Twitter often, I can't remember the last time I often see Trump's tweets, right? It's very rare that I see his tweets pop up within my timeline, but I will see a lot of fucking liberals tweets and this and this and that, like often and really really quickly, right? So it's clearly skewed, and they're always using this to be like, oh, see, look, it's a popularity contest. Look how many more people like this tweet as opposed to this tweet. It's like, yeah, because Twitter is also more leftist, especially now than it used to be, considering a lot of the purges that are continuing to happen, right? So you're going to get some skewed results, and like CNN and all these guys are doing polls and are like, oh, gun rights, people want restrictions on gun rights more than they've ever done. But that might be true because of a lot of the propaganda that they're releasing out, like they're on high tilt with that shit. But the way that these people often do polls is they oversample Democrats in Democratic areas and like, underrepresent Republicans. So you get a bunch of skewed numbers. So you shouldn't really believe a lot of these poll numbers. They're just trying to convince you that you don't have as much support as you actually do have. So, it's like these kids are also being used to go after the sponsors of the NRA. So, this constant demonization of them is going to lead to more violence. And not only that, in St. Paul, there was another sign that was spray painted with "Kill the NRA" on it, like just the other day or yesterday or something. So, this stuff is going to keep happening because these kids are being used to spew the most, ridiculous propaganda from the left, blaming, gun rights and gun rights activists for these shootings, which is not fucking true. Like, they're ignoring what the policies did to help create this situation, to help foster the situation. They're, like the sheriff guy is not accountable. He's not stepping down. He's like, it's not my fault that these guys didn't go in. I trained them, this, and that. It's like, no, these guys were the most corrupt people within your police department, were put within this school division in order to oversee the program that was already audited, and they found that there was like tons of corruption and fraud and shit within the program. So, these guys that you had in place were the most cowardice probably of your police departments and of your police force, and they they wanted an easy, cushy job where they could just hang out on campus and do nothing. So this is why they weren't willing to face down a barrel of an AR-15. Like another thing, that David Hogg kid, he's like, well, who would want to face down the barrel of a fucking AR-15? It's like trained professionals that are there to protect children, maybe, right? But cops, they're just glorified tax collectors, essentially. Like, a lot of them have no intention to protect you. They're not really there to protect you. They're just there to get, money and resources from you to give to the state. They take you away when you don't fucking pay them enough money. You don't pay the government enough money. Like that. That's pretty much, they're just the enforcers. So you can't really expect much from these people either. This is why you need to allow people to protect themselves. You cannot rely on the government. These people were there. They were in the distance to help people. And oftentimes, that's not even the case. You have to call an ambulance. You have to call 911 for these people to arrive at your home, which can take 5 to 10 minutes. And if you live in a bad area, sometimes they don't even show up at all, right? Or they take half an hour to get there. So you can't fucking depend on these people. So you can't let them disarm you. And they keep lying. They keep promoting this shit, saying AR-15 is an assault weapon, a military grade weapon. Like, they're trying to make it very fucking scary, which it's not a military grade fucking weapon, right? Like, they're acting like the majority of deaths are from assault rifles. This is not the case. And you see they're just moving down the line. Once they get the assault rifles, it's going to be, handguns and shit, right? So it's a never-ending thing with these people. They will not be happy until everybody's guns are taken away, unless you're the law enforcement, which we've seen what the law enforcement does when they're the only ones with guns in the area. I'm not saying that's the case with there's lots of heroic police that do great things, that put their lives in danger, that save people and stuff. Don't get me wrong, that is true, but like I said, you can't fucking depend on them, because this is the results you're gonna get. And these kids, I feel sorry for them, because their minds are probably getting filled every day with propaganda from their parents, from who knows who they are in contact with, because this can't be good for their developing minds, and they're gonna be perfect little puppets, right, in the future, especially this David Hogg one. And the other girl, she's going to be like an activist type. She's not probably going to be running for anything political, but the David Hogg kid probably will in the future, I'm guessing, unless, something happens to discredit him to some extent, right? But they're just pawns. They're just little puppets being used to say what the left can't say themselves. And then, like I said, if you criticize them, you're a horrible fucking individual. You hate kids. You want these kids to be murdered. How could you say this about them? Blah blah blah. You're a terrible person. But that's all I pretty much had to say. And if you like my content, subscribe and have a good day. See ya.